It is the event that we have all been waiting for, people. The movie event of the summer. And it's a momentous occasion, not just for it being the famous Barbenheimer drop, but also because, as Luke and I have been talking about for the last couple of weeks now, ever since the strike started, this might be the last like full blockbuster weekend release that we get for a while going forward, at least for the rest of the year. I am joined once again by Luke of Luke Reviews and first timer to the show, Luisa Tascone. Luisa, how's it going? Happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's Tascone. Well done.
Tascone. There we go.
A very common mistake.
Had a feeling it was going to happen sooner rather than later. Glad to get it out of the way now, though. And we are here to talk about the double release of Barbie and Oppenheimer. Guys, this is going to be a big one. We've got a lot to talk about. So without further ado, let's just jump in. This is the Barbenheimer episode after the credits. What is going on, people? Welcome back to another episode of the Talkin TV podcast. We are back on your regularly scheduled Sunday morning programming, and we are here for arguably the movie event of the summer. I mean, Luke, when they said that there was going to be a Christopher Nolan movie this year, you know, before we even knew what it was about, before we even knew it was Oppenheimer, I think we already had like the weekend booked. We were like, okay, this has been Nolan's weekend for like the last, I want to say like almost 10 years. I think the only movie that he didn't release on this weekend slot was Interstellar back in 2014, but I'm pretty sure every movie that he's done, I want to say since Dark Knight Rises, has been in that like second or third weekend of July slot. And after Tenet came out in the middle of COVID craziness, it was just like, okay. And the reception of that was what it was. Obviously, because, you know, Nolan was the only person that was bold enough to actually release a movie in theaters in the middle of COVID. I think it's safe to say that people were like, oh, okay, what's going to be next for Nolan? But I mean, he's just earned that type of reputation. He's the only filmmaker that can still sell a movie on name alone. And then, of course, we had the other kind of interesting release that was coming out, a movie that had been not in development hell, but a movie that had changed creative hands quite an amount of times. I believe this was originally supposed to be Anne Hathaway starring in this part, and then it went over to Amy Schumer at a certain point before Mattel selected Greta Gerwig for this to unintentionally become like her first official like big budget film to do. And there's another tidbit in this weekend as well that kind of results in the mania that we're seeing right now, because obviously this has become a subject of meme craziness, if you will say the least, which is that Christopher Nolan famously left Warner Brothers in 2020 over Warner Brother and HBO's decision to release all of their movies on both HBO and in theaters simultaneously in 2021. He was very, very much against this. He said, no, this destroys the effect of the theatrical experience, and this is going to cause the movie industry to suffer heavily. Can't say that he was really wrong about that. And so he took Oppenheimer and brought it over to Universal. And so Oppenheimer is the first film ever from Nolan that has not been distributed by Warner Brothers. And so what do they do? Those petty blighters that they are, they end up taking Barbie and dropping it in the same release day weekend as Oppenheimer, which results in where we are now. So I'm actually going to start with our new guest today, first time to the show, Luisa. What have been your thoughts just in general on, before we get into the movies themselves, on the whole Oppenheimer Barbie craziness? Did you like dress up in order to go out for Barbie? Get you know, because I know a lot of people were taking pictures getting ready for that.
They were, weren't they? I mean, I didn't really like, it was kind of like, I went and saw both movies yesterday. I did a double feature, and I'm still honestly processing both of the films in my system. But it was a single date day, and so I just kind of wore something very casual. But then before I knew it, I realized I was putting on hot pink bike shorts, and I was like, all right, well, this is on point. I saw Oppenheimer first in hot pink bike shorts, and then I felt more as one with the team in the second movie. I went and saw it at the Regal Theater in Times Square, and they were kind of like, they're renovating the theater right now. Oh. So it looked like I was just going into like a construction site to see these two massive films. But it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I can only imagine what it was like. But there were also probably like a ton of other people that were doing it. So you can't have been the only one that felt that way.
So many people were in pink. Pink like satchels and like full-on outfits and glitter and those pink see-through sunglasses like indoors. So it was like, do it.
Yes, because as we know, the Barbie movie apparently caused the world a shortage in the color pink paint because of how much it used for the set design.
Good.
Luke, oh
Good.
yeah, Luke, what have been your thoughts on the whole on the double release, the Barbenheimer mania so far that has kind of stricken the world of social media at least?
Yeah, I think this maybe is the first successful meme movie event. Like you have Morbius, but that wasn't good.
No.
But this one, both movies are generally received very well. They're making a lot of money. So I guess, as we've been saying all year since March, the movies are indeed back, and
Yeah.
this may be the culmination of that saying. I saw them both on Friday. I got off work a little early. I saw Barbie first because I thought I'm gonna need time to take in Oppenheimer and can't do that order. So I watched Barbie. Audience was significantly younger for Barbie, a lot in the 15, 16, 17, 18 range. So then I watched that, and then I headed over to a different theater, the one that had the IMAX screen, to watch Oppenheimer. And now, for the first time, I can actually appreciate what IMAX is. Like,
Yeah.
I
No.
like Avatar. Yeah, that was a video game kind of thing, but you don't really get what IMAX is until you've seen a movie, a real movie. Let's call it that. Just like this one.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, especially given that, like, because of how effects heavy Avatar is. It's like, I feel like that, especially with the last one too, it's like, I feel like that's got more of the 3D thing going for it than necessarily the IMAX thing going for it. Yeah, so as far as my viewing experiences go, so I tried my best to get the IMAX, the 70 millimeter Oppenheimer screening, and every single goddamn showing yesterday was sold out. So I saw it at a regular theater, but don't worry, I will actually be watching it in its full glory at IMAX at some point because, needless to say, I will be watching that again. But my brother came down yesterday. We saw Barbie at 1 p.m. We went to the AMC in what's it called? We went to the AMC in Times Square, and then we went to the Upper West Side, out of the way of a lot of the crowds. The theater was still absolutely packed for Oppenheimer. We saw Barbie at 1. We saw Oppenheimer at 7:45. And yeah, like I said, just the experience was crazy. And I mean, I went to see Theater Camp on Tuesday earlier this week when they were doing the first initial showings. And like, I hadn't seen the AMC in Lincoln Center that full, like, in a while. It had been a while. I think I want to say like the last time I saw it that full was pre-COVID. And so we've got this massive double release, right? Two movies that are pretty polar opposite. Two movies that are appealing to pretty much like very different demographics. One that is skewing pretty much younger, one that is skewing older. You know, Nolan's movies are usually hit like a lot of prime demographics, but this one but this one, you know, I think skews older, you know, considering that it's about the inventor of the atom bomb. So like I said, so we're gonna talk about Barbie first. And I have to say, so Greta Gerwig has been, as I've called it, one of the new members of the new film brats, as I like to call it. You know, the generation of millennial directors that have really come around in the 2010s and really made a name for themselves in terms of like their very creative, original ideas that people, you know, will actually want to watch. You know, she'd been writing movies with her partner Noah Baumbach for years now, contributed to scripts like Margot at the Wedding and Mistress America and several others. And then obviously she makes her big, she directed a movie with Joe Swanberg, the name of which I'm currently forgetting, but obviously her big breakthrough comes with Lady Bird in 2017 and then is followed by Little Women in 2019. And so naturally you could say that I believe the term a hard left turn when it comes to genre and types of movies directing, I don't think does Barbie nearly enough justice, especially considering that like when the first trailer comes out, you're like, you don't even know how to describe what the movie's going to look like. You know, it's this very big pastel pink. It's poppy. It's got a ton of like pop music in it. It's very bright. It's very wavy. It's very colorful. It's very the jokes you can immediately tell are going to be corny before you even hear a word of dialogue. The cast is smoking hot. You've got Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling as the lead characters, and I think that's another thing to talk about, not just with Barbie, but with both the movies that are dropped this weekend, is good God, they really scoured all of Hollywood for like every major actor, I think, or makes an appearance in this movie at some capacity, at least actors that are like under the age of 40 for Barbie, and then actors that are, you know, between the ages of, I think, 35 and 50 for Oppenheimer, you know, with the exception of Downey Jr. We'll get to that. And and so going into Barbie, I didn't really know what to expect because I think first and foremost, we got to say probably one of the greatest marketing campaigns for a movie that I've ever seen. And this is in the age of COVID when studios just stopped marketing movies at all. And then they wondered why nobody showed up to watch them in theaters. And so I'm like, okay, so this is a really colorful, bright campaign. It looks really fun. It looks really enjoyable. And I'm like, but something feels off. I don't know what it is. I'm like, my movie sixth sense is going off for a second here. What is going on? I'm like, in the back of my head, I'm like, why does it feel like this is just going to be another version of the Lego movie, but without any actual Legos? I mean, I don't know. Luke, did you get that sense from the trailers, or am I just crazier? Because I feel
I got not a Lego movie, but from the second trailer especially, that kind of killed a little bit of the hype for me. I thought, oh, maybe this doesn't look that good. I was like, oh, is this like Elf again?
right,
but pink this time.
Yeah.
So that's what I got from the anticipation of it. But yeah, the marketing, like Warner Brothers needed it. Like
Yeah,
the
it really
Flash,
did.
the Flash turned out to be the biggest bomb in comic book movie history.
Oof,
So now
yeah.
Barbie is that's all they're betting on. Blue Beetle is going to make a total of $2 in
Yep.
a few weeks.
Yep, because
But
they
Barbie,
got no actors to promote that.
no, and Barbie is making like what 350 million,
Something like that.
That's what it estimated, and that's pretty
Yep. Wow.
impressive.
Who knew Barbie was going to be the savior of their entire year of what has probably been one of the worst box office years for Warner Brothers ever. Yeah, Luisa. So what was your general anticipation going into Barbie? Like, what did you expect from the movie? Like from the trailers? Like, what if there were any expectations to begin with?
Honestly, I didn't really have any specific expectations. I purposely decided to watch Barbie second because I knew that Oppenheimer would be such a heavy, like very much concentrated 3 hours of my life. So I knew that I needed Barbie to kind of like decompress.
Yes.
And that's exactly what it was. I went in not really expecting anything other than just being really excited to see Gosling because just last week I did a podcast and we talked about all of Ryan Gosling's films. So I just recently in the last like few weeks have been watching all of his filmography. And so I was just really excited to see his new stuff. And it's so funny that you mentioned Elf because as I was leaving the theater after seeing Barbie yesterday, I was riding the escalator down and there was a couple in front of me and they were like, did you feel like it was just another elf? And they were like, yeah, they did feel like another elf. And I was like, yeah, it did kind of feel like another elf. But I walked in with just high hopes, no expectations, just going in to have a good time. And I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny. Yeah, that's good that you two brought up Elf because that's actually probably a better comparison. I just keep thinking Lego Movie because of for me it was the Will Ferrell thing when I saw Will Ferrell pop up in the trailer as like the board the chairman of the board. I'm like, oh, this is what they're doing. Okay, because for the longest time I'm like, okay, I'm actually kind of impressed because this is the first marketing campaign that hasn't given away the entire plot of the movie. I was actually almost impressed. I'm like, is Warner Brothers actually showing some restraint here? What's going on? Because every single marketing campaign from them over the last like couple of years has pretty much given away the entire movie. And so, but the Elf comparisons I think do this movie better, where essentially what you have here is you have a movie in which the Barbie dolls have taken like these live action character formats and exist in their own universe separate from the real world, but are also still tied to like people playing with them in the real world. So there, and basically when you have the Margot Robbie who plays the self-titled stereotype Barbie starts like falling apart, quote unquote, but not really. Like it's supposed to be like a series of jokes that involve is like, oh, she's getting cellulite. Oh, her feet don't naturally form into heels. It's what else did they say? The typical
thinking about death.
Yeah, thinking about death and overall existential looming threats. And so essentially her and Ken, portrayed by Ryan Gosling, have to leave and go to the real world in order to find the girl who plays with her, and at the same time go on a crazy madcap adventure. And
but I feel like we never got that from the trailers.
Right. So
I had no idea.
Well, so the whole thing is you got the Will Ferrell stuff in the trailers. You got I believe you saw America Ferrera temporarily, and you saw the scenes where they were going through like the different landscapes in order to get to the real world. But it's kind of weird because you're like, okay, there's no portal. They're just listing off a series of things that they have to do. It's like, okay, hop in a car, travel in a rocket ship, ride on a pink bike, go on a boat, and just like a series of nonstop nonsensical things until they get to the real world. And it's like, okay, but how do they actually get there? And the movie's it's one of those kind of things where the movie's kind of just telling you, don't worry about it. It's not really that important.
Yeah, I think that was good. That was a good decision on there.
Oh, yeah, man. It's like suspend your disbelief because Barbie is make believe. So it was just a nice play on children's imagination.
I guess just in the sense that like the movie is kind of playing fast and loose with its rules, quote unquote. And I get it, there really aren't any rules, but it's like there were just a lot of times where like it just felt like it was throwing a lot at me. And I'm like, I don't really know what's happening here. Can I please get a little bit of an explanation? Like, so what I will say is where this movie succeeds, because I will come out first and foremost and say that I was not as much of a fan of this movie as a lot of other people were. But what I will say is where this movie succeeds is the existential nature, of, for lack of a better word, the Toy Story element, where it's the whole existential nature of, okay, what happens with growing up and what are we going to do with you know, with like that childhood imagination? What happens when the inevitable adult feelings start to take root? You know, I feel like certain things that I felt like were targeted at millennials specifically, just based on Greta Gerwig and her millennial nature, specifically in kind of how she characterized herself in the movie as the America Ferrera character, who is revealed to be kind of this what's it called, not single mom, but is revealed to be this kind of hapless worker at the Mattel Corporation in the real world, who is revealed to have been the actual person who played with the Margot Robbie Barbie doll when she was a kid, and whose drawings kind of, as a result of, I would say, a midlife almost stemming from a midlife crisis, cause the changes to happen to Barbie, which prompt her to go into the real world. The other thing that this movie happens to throw in is plenty of jokes about the patriarchy. And oh boy, do they take every single chance they can to throw every joke in the world. Because of course, when you take the Kens, who not just Ryan Gosling's Ken, but all of the male figures in the Barbie world who are the Kens, you know, who are played by a variety of other actors. Probably the two most notable being Simu Liu and Kingsley Ben-Adir. What's it called? When Ken follows her into the real world and sees that, as in the Barbie world where the Barbies run everything, in the real world, it's like, oh, the men run everything. And he's like, oh, okay. So, and you know, they're making plenty of jokes about the patriarchy and all that. And so naturally, when Barbie gets back to the world after Ken gets there first, it's like, oh no, Ken has brainwashed everybody. And now the Barbies have been like just reduced into subservience. And so now naturally Barbie has to save everything from everyone because she thinks that from the Kens, because she thinks, and the patriarchy, because she thinks that she has screwed it up. And there are plenty of jokes to be had here as well. So real quick, what are your guys' thoughts on those?
Luke?
No, I thought it was funny. It's not as funny as some people are claiming. I guess some of the jokes there was a bit too much of them. Like the ones that hit, they really hit. Most of them probably involve Ryan Gosling. We got a big cheer when he first showed up. It was like No Way Home, but with Ryan Gosling. He really is the meme of the past few years. But no, yeah, the story. I don't have much to say about it. I enjoyed it, but some of the pacing was off. I didn't really know where it was heading. It was like, okay, is this like the Kens taking over? I feel like I've seen that somewhere before, but I couldn't put the nail on the head where I've seen before. But for the most part, I enjoyed it. I guess overall it was a bit too much for me. If it had been maybe more subtle and less in your face, but looking at the sets, this movie is not going to be subtle at all.
But subtle. Going into this movie expecting subtlety was the wrong inclination for sure. Louisa, your thoughts on it?
I mean, I was similar. For the most part, I enjoyed it. There was something about it that I was like, what is it that I'm not sure about in this film? And I think that's I really want to go watch it again to try and answer that question, because I'm not really quite sure yet. I think it just goes to the fact that I went in not knowing what to expect, like what story they're going to come up with for Barbie. But for the most part, I really did enjoy it. It was like a classic. It almost felt like a children's rom-com, like with the way that like things happened, and you did have to suspend your disbelief a lot. But I did really enjoy several moments in the film, including like a dance break and the original songs. And I'm glad that Gosling got to show off his talents as a singer and a dancer. There's one particular scene on the beach that I absolutely adored, on the Barbie land beach, or like all the corporate suits in roller skates. That was really funny.
Pretty Will. I feel like this movie also was like every time Will Ferrell showed up on screen was just like, yes, I'm Will Ferrell, and I'm still fucking hilarious. So
yeah. I mean, he's still doing his thing, and it still works, and I honestly, yeah, I really want to, it's made me really want to watch it a few more times to just kind of get an idea, because I was in the same place of like, I don't know where this story is going. And the ending especially kind of went in a way that I was like, okay, I can kind of see what they're trying to say here. I think I get what they're trying to say here.
Yeah.
But I think it will take a rewatch and another rewatch to see like where they're going with this. I thought it was really clever. I thought it was super fun. Ryan Gosling didn't get a cheer when I went and saw it. But there was definitely a lot of like extremely audible laughs. I was definitely one of the people that was like clapping at particular jokes. I would say that there were, as a millennial myself, there was a lot of it that I totally did understand. I appreciated even the the commercial for the depressed Barbie. That was a great one. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. But yeah, there is like one thing where I'm like, what is it about it that doesn't like make me want to go out and go, this was the best movie ever? Like I want to see it a few more times to make that distinction.
Yeah, definitely. And there were, like you guys said, there were a lot of times where I did audibly laugh hard, and a lot of them were around Ryan Gosling and Will Ferrell, because Ryan Gosling, man, he knows. I don't know what it's about him. I don't think I've ever seen a guy who can go from like being such a, like, for lack of a better word, such a like a stoic, like reserved figure, like, you know, with his movies like Drive, and you know, with his and Only God Forgives, and really anytime that he works with Nicholas Winding Refn, also, you know, little bit of Half Nelson as well, to just being so ridiculous and goofy and over the top. Like I talked about this before. The Nice Guys is one of my absolute
we haven't
favorite
seen
movies
that since
ever.
The Nice Guys, so I'm
And
so
it's
glad
like,
that we got to see him. The only thing that I will say though is I'm really disappointed that we didn't get a Ryan Gosling high squeal.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you know what? I agree. I agree with that. I'm with you there.
And you know when they showed that, you know, back in the day when they were shooting the film, and then that video came out of them being like, oh, we caught them shooting Barbie on Venice Beach or whatever.
Yeah.
You saw him do a squeal when she like punched the guy, and I was like, Gosling's squeal is coming back.
Why did they cut that?
There the whole time going, where is the squeal? And we didn't get to see it. So
that's so disappointing.
Yeah, it was the only disappointing
part. Oh, that's so disappointing. But yeah, my thing with it too is that because I was thinking about this long and hard yesterday, and I think I figured it out. And it's that I think there's a little bit of a tonal disconnect is the issue, because the movie flip-flops back and forth from being really fun and really silly and really corny and campy and over the top and really obvious and unsubtle, to all of a sudden, like the ending scene with her and Rhea Perlman, who's like the ghost of the creator of Barbie, and them having like this Guardians of the Galaxy 3, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows-esque like existential, like, oh, we're staring into the face of the abyss as like Barbie's about to become a human. And I'm like sitting there, I'm like, where the hell did this come from? Weren't we just like having a silly like beach fight like 2 minutes ago? Like, what is happening? And so I think that's kind of where the issue is that, like I said, on the one hand, this movie wants to be this existential, anxiety-inducing, like, despair about the worries of, like, you know, getting older and having to say goodbye to your childhood, and on the other hand wants to be like this fun Lego movie romp. And I think that kind of what it misses that movies like Elf and movies that the Lego movie get right is that ultimately it's about the fun of it and kind of like reclaiming your childhood, you know. And to me, like, I don't think the movie does a good enough job in terms of like doing the whole you having to say goodbye to your childhood, because at the end of the day, the America Ferrera character and the Barbie character, they kind of have two separate trajectories, and there's not a whole, like, aside from the establishing thing of when they figure out how they are linked, there's not a whole lot that's connecting them, I have to say. And I think that's kind of where the disjointedness of the film comes from and separates what would otherwise be a really good movie into being kind of just like it's fun, it's colorful for sure, but like this is I don't know if this is going to be one that I actively go out of my way to rewatch, you know.
I do want to say though, I think that I didn't when I was watching it, I didn't get the saying goodbye to your childhood. I didn't get that at all.
Right, exactly.
I'm a 33-year-old woman watching this movie about, and I just saw it as like female empowerment, and I felt like that was such a heavy theme, and I loved that they did that, and I loved America Ferrera's monologue, and how that's like snapping these women out of the brainwashing of like the patriarchy. I also loved that the movie kind of called itself out for that, like the jumping between like the serious moments and the fun moments, like them saying, like calling out the fact that they shouldn't have cast Margot Robbie as Barbie and she shouldn't be saying
That
these
was great.
things, or even the fact that Rhea Perlman comes up at the end of the film and Farrell's like, oh, that's the ghost of the lady that lives on the 14th floor at Mattel. Like, I love that they called that out, and that's what made it all like okay, because again, it's this world of make-believe, and it's a massive suspend your disbelief kind of film. And I think the ultimate theme of this was female empowerment, and I got that massively throughout the whole film, and that's pretty much what I got out of that end sequence as well. But it just, for me, it kind of felt like, okay, the message is received. They made a great point. I love that they didn't make it like Ken and Barbie get together again.
Yeah.
And that and that Ken has to feel, oh God, Ken is me was wonderful. But once they reached that point of like a quote unquote resolution, or like this is the lesson that we learned, that's where I was like, oh, is this the end? But then it kind of kept going, and I couldn't tell where they were going after the point was made. And I think that's where, and having said that, I adored the final scene of the film. I thought it was very cute.
Yeah, the end joke, yes.
But I was kind of disappointed because the lights didn't come up when the credits were rolling, so I was expecting like a cute little button at the end,
like a post-credit scene, yeah.
And I was really I was really disappointed about that. But I want to say that I just wanted to say that I really felt that female empowerment element in the film, more so than just a Toy Story aspect.
Right. No, absolutely. And like I said, that was clear. Like I said, that's clearly what this movie was going for. Like from minute one, I don't think that was ever a secret as far as the message that it was going for. And for sure, that was on display throughout the entirety of it. But yeah, so with that being said, we are about at the halfway point. So let's transition into Oppenheimer. But before we do, final thoughts and star ratings on Barbie. Louisa, we'll start with you.
Oh, okay. Didn't expect that. How many stars? 5
out of 5.
Out of 5? Yes. I would give it.
You can do 0.5s.
I want to give it a 4. I want to give it a 4.
Wow.
4 stars high praise. Out of 5. Yeah.
High praise. Luke, final thoughts and star ratings for Barbie.
I think if I could have related to it more, it might have been higher, but for now it's at a 3.5. But I do plan on watching it again with my aunt because she really wants to, and she just couldn't on the day.
Yep. I'm going 1.5 star lower. I'm going about a 3 out of 5. Like I said, there were a lot of enjoyable parts to it for sure, but overall, like I said, like I said, there was too much disjointedness for me overall in terms of for me to like really appreciate it. It just kept bouncing back and forth of being like, it's like, oh, this is really funny. Oh, now it's not. Oh, but this is really funny. And it's like it was too all over the place tonally for me to really, really appreciate and enjoy. But like I said, still a good effort. I admire Greta Gerwig for taking a bold swing, and I'm really interested to see what she does with her Chronicles of Narnia movies that she's going to direct next for Netflix. That's going to be really interesting to say the least, because we haven't had a Narnia movie in forever. I'll be amazed if there's still any person under the age of like 15 that actually like remembers those movies. But now we've arrived. The big one, quite literally. Luke, I mean, like we were talking about, like this is our month, you know, Mission Impossible and a Nolan movie. Like this, like it's like this month was like carved out in the earth just for us. I mean, like Luke, you've been a Nolan fan for how long now?
Well, 2014's Interstellar was the movie that opened my eye to, wow, this is what movies can be. Like that whole year, we look at it, that's the most impactful year of my movie taste. But Interstellar was the biggest one in that introduced me to Nolan. I'd probably seen The Dark Knight before that, but not realizing I'd seen The Dark Knight, just like knowing it. I don't know when I first saw Inception, but Interstellar was the one that started it all for me. And since then, it's just
Yeah.
one of my most anticipated movies of every year that he puts out a movie.
Yep. It's just like it's like the man truly cannot miss. Like I said, he is the only person left, I would say, more than Scorsese, more than Spielberg. I think the only one that comes close to him is Tarantino, but even Tarantino does because Tarantino's movies don't feel. Tarantino doesn't make blockbusters. That's the thing. Like, he is the last person alive who can sell a $100 to $300 million blockbuster on his name alone. Since the Batman movies, they've pretty much all been entirely original ideas. And what's so fascinating about Oppenheimer is this is the first one since, I want to say, The Prestige, that's like not about like this crazy high concept. Like, we're not traveling through space. We're not witnessing a war event through three different point of views through time. We're not watching a crazy spy movie that involves time inversion and moving backwards and stuff. And is this timeline forward? Is this timeline going back? We're not doing any of that. Instead, he's essentially made a 3-hour long biopic, for lack of a better word, that is almost entirely just guys talking in rooms. But somehow, of course, because of the power of cinema and because of just his power in general, he has turned this into one of the most compelling movies of the year, if not one of the most compelling movies, for me at least, of the last several years. Louisa, what are your? I don't think we've ever actually had a chance to talk about this. What are your thoughts on Nolan as a director and his movies?
I actually haven't seen a lot of his films. I mean, I am very ashamed to admit that I have never seen Interstellar. So it's definitely a movie that I've wanted to watch for a very long time. But I know all of Nolan's films are very much like, okay, I'm going to sit down and watch a film. So you have to be in the right state of mind to watch a Nolan film. Yes. And again, that's why I decided to watch it first, because I watched it at like 10:50 a.m. because that's when the mind is like the most open to information. But I am a massive fan of Inception. When that movie came out, I remember how I was in university at the time, and I remember how big it was when that movie came out, and I absolutely adored it. But again, not something I could watch over and over and over again, because his films are films.
Yes.
Like bold underline italics, like he makes films. So I knew that I would go in expecting that I would respect the art of filmmaking quite a lot in this film, which I did. I really did. There were a lot of questions that I had, especially in the beginning, but he really, I mean, we'll talk about this later, but like it really did come together really well.
Yeah, like I said, he's one of my absolute favorite filmmakers. He just on a craft level, he makes them like nobody else. I've watched, oh man, I'm trying to think now. I've watched Inception 3 times. I've watched Dark Knight more times than I can. The Batman trilogy they did, the Dark Knight trilogy, is to me still the single greatest take on any superhero story that's ever been done. I mean, like I said, just the way that he's taken. It's funny because some people have compared him to like the modern day Kubrick, and I see where they're coming from. But to me, it's like nobody can do Kubrick except Kubrick. So my whole thing is, it's like Nolan isn't Kubrick. Nolan is Nolan. Like, he does everything to such a specific way. But it's not just like how he makes things. It's his respect for the craft of filmmaking and the fact that he chooses to do things still so analog. The fact that, again, with the glut of CG films and obviously all the behind the scenes stuff that have come out about the CG part of the industry right now, the fact that he chooses to do everything still so practically, and just how that gives his movies such a realness that so many movies of that caliber just feel like they've lost. Like I said, the fact that he worked with real theoretical physicists in order to design what the black hole in Interstellar was going to look like. The fact that he used real World War II replicas for Dunkirk. The fact that he actually crashed a fucking plane into an airport for the high scene in Tenet. Like, he really does have like this respect for the analog nature of filmmaking and for making things feel as real as humanly possible. And the fact that, a lot of people have said that he can feel cold and emotionally distant because he kind of dictates himself towards ideas that are more about like he makes thinking man's movies. A lot of critics have come out and said, he thinks that he's way smarter than he really is, in terms of he always has to play around with time and, very, very high concepts in his movies. The fact that Inception is basically a crack heist movie, but it's takes place obviously, within multiple layers of dreams, exploring, the way that the subconscious interacts with each other. Or Interstellar, how he's using theoretical physics in order to play around with the idea of not just time travel, but the idea of like how emotion works through time, what happens when you're separated from your loved ones for extended periods of time. And bringing that all the way through to Oppenheimer, I think a lot of people have been saying that this is his best one. A lot of people have been saying that this is his best one since The Dark Knight. And I have to say that for this being the first movie that does not feature a heavy sci-fi concept since Tenet, for this to be, like I said, essentially just a regular biopic, for him to take this heavy of a look into a character like J. Robert Oppenheimer, who I said in my review yesterday on Letterboxd that this is a person in history who I've heard his name once in a completely out of context setting, and now after watching this movie, I'm like, I want to make a heavy petition that this guy be taught more about in schools, because this has got to be one of the most fascinating, one of the most interesting, I'm not going to say problematic, but definitely one of the most morally skewed characters. And I think that in terms of how you have a character who, like I said, he is compared so often to Prometheus throughout the movie, a little bit heavy-handed at certain points throughout, but for the most part, he is regarded, again, he's the man who gave mankind the true ability to destroy themselves, and kind of like the level of gravitas and the level of not understanding, but kind of the level of like world weariness that brings onto the character, and with the performance that Cillian Murphy portrays him with, and how Nolan is able to just still keep you invested and keep you wrapped in with, essentially, like I said, a movie that is 1/3 that is 1/3 people talking in rooms movie, 1/3 legal drama, and 1/3 a kind of a race against the clock movie. But even then, he like subverts expectations, because like the whole point is that they're trying to make the atom bomb so they could beat the Germans to it. Oppenheimer obviously was revealed to have communist affiliations, but obviously is also Jewish, so he very much is for defeating Hitler or the Germans. But then the issue becomes, it's like, okay, but then Germany surrenders, and before they've even, right when they've completed the bomb. So now, like, so great. Now we've created this massive weapon that we know for a fact that the U.S. government is going to use to its advantage, and will not use it for the intention that it was originally designed for. What do we do now? And so essentially it turns the last hour of this movie into like a moral scruples movie, where essentially you have kind of the politicians who are kind of all anchored by this character portrayed by Robert Downey Jr., Louis Strauss, which also we'll talk about Downey Jr. in a minute, but how you essentially have it turn into like this moral scrupulous tale about them trying to pin essentially all of this moral wrongdoing onto a character who has already kind of been torturing himself morally, because once he sees the power of what he has created is capable of, he's horrified by it, and ultimately is now realizing, that like I don't necessarily know that what we did was wrong, but it definitely, this is going to be used for the wrong purposes. And now, I mean, Nolan even said it when he was promoting it. He's like, Oppenheimer might be one of the most important figures in history that like nobody talks about. And I kind of just wanted to start there as a point of contention. Luke, I mean, like, what did you know about Oppenheimer? I mean, you read the whole book that this was based on, right? Yeah. What was it called again? American Prometheus?
American Prometheus, indeed. I have it right here.
Oh my God.
That's a solid 600 pages. And the font is not very big either.
Oh. No, that is not a big font at all.
So, and let me tell you, Nolan did not leave out anything, like at all. Only what happened before the movie and after. That's the only stuff that he left out. Everything else is like, oh wow, that I read that. And
so, is it also in the perspective, like under the umbrella of him being investigated in the book?
Oh yeah, that's all there. That's the most interesting parts. Just like is he a communist agent or not? Because that's what they suspected, when they found out that the Soviets also had tested a bomb. But yeah, before that, I may have heard the name in passing, but like, because you know your Einsteins, your Stephen Hawkings, but you don't know Oppenheimer, and he's maybe changed the world more than any other physicist for the worse. Even if it's for the worse, you still should know his name. And yeah, I agree with you, Dom. More people need to know about him, if it's taught in schools, if it's just somehow more people need to know about this guy and what he did for and to the world in a way.
Yes, absolutely. But I mean, but the biggest thing is like, again, you had him interacting with so many real world famous physicists. I mean, Albert Einstein is in the movie, portrayed by Tom Conti, and pops up multiple times. You even have him interacting with, Luke and I were joking about this before the podcast, but you even having him interact at the beginning of the movie in his university days in Europe with the original Heisenberg, obviously who Walter White pulled his name from, but yeah, so like you have all these like real world physicists at the turn of the century, and but Oppenheimer, man, I mean, like I said, I don't think that anybody has changed the world, unfortunately, like him for the better. And I mean, if you just want to talk about Cillian Murphy too, and I don't think there's anything that I love more when I see a performance from an actor, a lead performance, that this is like he's earned this. He's worked his way up to this. Where you have Murphy, who, again, Irish actor, has been acting for the better part of 30 years. I feel like Americans were first mainstreamly introduced to him in 2002's 28 Days Later. And then obviously, he auditions for Batman, but he kind of has a Tom Hiddleston situation where his performance is good, but Nolan's like he's not right for the part. But he was so impressed by his performance that he put him as Scarecrow in the movie, and he keeps working with Nolan. He pops back up in both the subsequent sequels as the Scarecrow, as well as appearing in both Inception and Dunkirk. So he's been working with Nolan for a long time now. He obviously just completed a massive run on the very popular British show Peaky Blinders, which a lot of people are big fans of. So he's been working for a long, long time. And Nolan even told him, he's like, I kept wanting to cast Cillian as the lead, but I was waiting for the right part. And then this comes along. Funnily enough, that book that Luke just flashed was given to Nolan by Robert Pattinson.
It wasn't this book. It was a different book.
Oh, it was a different book? Wait, what was the book?
It was a book of speeches of some sort.
Oh, okay. Got it. Damn, I was hoping that it was this book, but that would have been cool. But so he's given this book by Robert Pattinson while they're doing press for Tenet, and he's so moved by the Oppenheimer bits that he's like, okay, I'm gonna make this my next movie. And so and then he reaches out to Cillian and is like, yeah, I've got the lead part for you. And I mean, it's safe to say, like, Cillian better get an Oscar now, if there even is an Oscars this around this in like 6 to 8 months. He better get an Oscar nomination for this, because holy hell, I feel like this is the performance he's been waiting to give his entire life. Like, it is just the perfect level of like reserved, cocky, and world weary throughout it. It's like such a typical yet atypical leading man performance. Like, I feel like in an era where it's like the traditional leading performance, like all modern day audiences are searching for so many things different, and I feel like this gives that to them. Just for me personally, like I was just so happy for him. I'm like, yes, this dude has been acting his ass off for the better part of 30 years now, and he's finally gotten something like a big mainstream movie part that everybody is gonna watch and everybody is gonna come away talking about. I mean, Louisa, we've talked enough. What are your general thoughts about Oppenheimer after watching it?
Oh man, I mean, again, I think it's another movie I'd like to watch again, to knowing now what I know and where the movie goes. I went in knowing very little about what the movie was about. I knew that it was a biopic. And I knew it was about someone named Oppenheimer, but I honestly didn't. I went in very, very cold, to the point where like 20 minutes into the film, I had to like sneak out my phone and just Google Robert Oppenheimer so I can just figure out what the hell everyone is talking about for the first like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Because they don't kind of ease you in. They go right into like information.
Yep.
And the one big question for me, in terms of like the filmmaking aspect, is I couldn't figure out why he chose certain points of the film to be in black and white.
Yes.
I was like, oh, maybe this is why. Is why. But then it would switch to color, and then it would be black and white. Like that was one element of it. I was like, I want to watch it again to try and figure out why, like, what was the symbolism of that? Because I couldn't figure it out. That's the only thing I couldn't really figure out. I thought it was very well written. I think that something to mention, Florence and Emily's performance in the film was phenomenal. I thought that they were wonderful. And to think that like Emily is this like British actor, like she just kills the American accent.
Yeah.
Every time I see her in an American accent, she just kills it. Like the both of their performances were absolutely outstanding for a film that is like heavily male.
Yes.
Like I just
very, 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 very heavily. Like I said,
heavily male. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, it's a product of the time. I get it. But as a woman watching this film, you know, we got into like 20, 30 minutes into the film. I was like, I haven't seen or heard a woman's voice yet. Okay, is this what this film is going to be? And then the first time I heard a woman's voice, it was like at the party where he met Florence's character. And some woman's like, this is better done. I was like, there we go. Woman's voice.
Yeah.
Very good. Anyway, I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was great. I thought it had I don't know. I can't tell if I felt it was too long. I don't know. Because I look back and I'm like, I don't know what I would cut.
Right.
There's just so much. I mean, the book itself is 600 pages. I mean, there's a lot of information about it. There's certain sequences that I really loved and respected, like the one where he's giving the speech to everyone after the success of the bomb, and he's having that like crisis of seeing all the effects and the use of sound in the film was incredible. Like that constant, like him hearing the feet stomping in the back of his head, and the editing was wonderful, and like the creation of tension in the film was great. And I really loved the very last scene.
Yes.
I really loved that.
Yes.
I don't want to say too much about what it was, but it was a very clever way to end the whole movie. And Downey Jr. I mean, I knew he was in the film, but I didn't recognize him at first.
Yeah.
Because he's like,
well, it's so funny because people like forget. I literally had to remind my brother yesterday. He's like, yes, it's only been, I'm like, Jared, I'm like, it's been 4 years since Endgame. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah, Endgame was 2019. I'm like, he hasn't been Iron Man for almost 5 years now. And he's getting older. I'm like, the man's only 2 years away from 60.
I mean, look, I think they did age him quite a bit, and he lost a ton of weight for the role. That it was just like, who is this skeleton man? Like in black and like, it was just, and that was one of the things that I noticed, that we rarely saw him in color.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's, I don't know. I'm still just baffled by this black and white concept.
So if memory serves, so Nolan actually did address this in some of the behind the scenes interviews, and I don't know. This is one of those things where I'm like, I don't know if I actually buy what he's saying, but if memory serves, he said that, okay, the black and white scenes are supposed to be objective versus the color scenes are supposed to be objective. And since the majority of the black and white scenes are supposed to be the court hearings that preceded it, I'm like, I was inclined to believe it, but then near like the last 30 minutes of the movie, when like the Rami Malek character comes back and they're basically like putting Downey Jr. on the stand and being like, yeah, this was a witch. This is a complete witch hunt. None of this is really substantiated or verified. That's what I'm like, okay,
yeah,
Nolan.
okay,
Like,
that makes sense then, because that's kind of where I was going towards the end, is like, okay, black and white is Downey Jr.'s point of view.
right.
If you go back to the same scene, like the one when they're around the table, and then it's in color again, but then it's kind of in Oppenheimer's point of view, and it's on like the other side of the table. So then, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And especially the last scene is in color, when we've mostly seen it in black and white through Strauss. Is that the character? Yeah,
Strauss.
Yeah, Strauss's point of view. And I loved just the tension. I to bring back the final scene, I loved the tension of the final scene of like you could see like the clock ticking, because you could see Strauss in the background walking.
Yep.
You know,
like around where the whole second half begins after the fact.
Yeah, and it was like, okay, did they say at any point anything about Strauss? And you're just sitting there like, oh my god,
yep,
oh my god,
and you're like, nope, they never did.
Yeah,
they never did. Yeah, and I'm like, if that doesn't sum up the point of the movie perfectly, then I don't know what will. Yeah, in terms of like the whole very, very heavy exposition.
But I will say also, there's two things that I thought that were very interesting. The fact that they didn't show anything about, they only talked about, but anything about Japan, like about the effects of Japan or anything like that. They didn't like, they just talked about it. They didn't show any of it.
Right.
And then the other thing was the fact that they told the story through the point of view of the investigation rather than it just being the story of how the bomb was created.
Yeah.
It's the looking back through the point of an investigation, which I found interesting.
Yes, it's a narrative lens that they've used in many times before, but it was used even more effectively here. Like I said, I'm like, yeah, they haven't made like an investigative like courtroom drama movie. I'm like, it's effectively almost utilizing a very similar structure that The Social Network did, but but in Nolan's way, which is just like, again, everything feels so much more bigger, so much more grander. The cast, I mean, we've talked about Cillian Murphy, we talked about Downey Jr., we talked about Blunt and Florence Pugh, but like, oh my God, like this is Nolan's Wes Anderson movie in the sense that he just got every single friggin' actor. I mean the list, I would have to pull it up just to what's it called? Just to get the amount of movie. But
Josh Hartnett, I didn't even recognize.
Yeah,
by
Josh
the way.
Hartnett. It's been a while. He's been making a comeback. Obviously, Damon, Casey Affleck, Rami Malek, Kenneth Branagh, Benny Safdie, Jason Clarke, Das Mulch, Dane DeHaan, Alden Ehrenreich, Tony Goldwyn, Dave Krumholtz, Matthew Modine, Michael Angarano, Jack Quaid, Josh Peck as one of the technicians that helps detonate the bomb. Like the cast just keep going on and on and on, and even like some of the lesser known people, like I've noticed a House of the Dragon alumni as one of the lead Communist Party members, Tom Conti as Albert Einstein.
The chick from Juno is
Olivia Thirlby. Yeah. That was baffling.
Did you mention Gary Oldman?
Gary Oldman as
he was the one that I was most anticipated for. Wait,
who did Gary Oldman play?
He's the president. He's Truman.
Oh my God. I didn't know that.
It's been a minute since he's popped up in something. And like I said, all these guys, they've gotten older. Gary Oldman is 70.
I did not recognize him at all. I did not know that.
Yeah. Gary Oldman, who hasn't been in a Nolan movie since Dark Knight Rises, the last time that he played Commissioner Gordon. So, yeah, he really pulled out all the stops. I remember back in 2021, 2022, when they were first filming this, and then they kept revealing the cast members, and it's like every single day there were like 3 to 4 new people added to this, and I'm like, how many freaking people are going to be in this movie, and how is he going to utilize them all? And by God, he did. Like, even if you didn't recognize them, and even if they only had like a tiny part, like Nolan really has evolved into one of those filmmakers that like you see his name on the docket, you're like, oh, I got to be there. I don't care if I'm in there for only a minute of screen time. I'm there. And yeah, it pays off in all the best ways. I mean, Luke, your general thoughts on the movie, like this has got to be your number one of the year, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's my number one Nolan as well for now.
Really? So this surpassed Dark Knight.
Oh, Dark Knight isn't even like my top.
Oh no!
It's Oppenheimer, Interstellar, Dunkirk, Dark Knight.
Wow. Okay.
I'm not a Dark Knight purist like a lot of other people.
Okay. I understand why. I understand why.
You do?
I do. Yes. As much as it pains me to say, as much as you see the poster in the corner right there, I do understand the people who are not as hot on that movie.
But anyway, yeah, the movie absolutely delivered. I knew it was going to be like, I'd have no trust in any other filmmaker more than Nolan to deliver. And just looking at the sheer amount of information that he had to deliver, and of course he did it in Nolan fashion and with the non-linear storytelling, which he's one of the best at. I just left the movie with this incredibly heavy feeling, like no other movie has left me with ever. Like this massive weight on my chest, like, oh, we did that, and now the world is completely different because of that. And the last scene especially, I saw a TikTok of it, so I've just been rewatching the last scene over and over again, with just these incredible visuals that hopefully we never see, but to just show them anyway just adds to that dreaded feeling. But the rest of the movie, I personally, I don't mind exposition in movies. That's an anomaly I've always had. So people are, Nolan's so exposition heavy. I'm like, ooh, I'm just gonna keep listening.
Yes, I'm interested,
and then try and take it all in. I love the science stuff of it. I guess there was less sciencey stuff than I expected, but I still enjoyed it for what it was. Everything in Los Alamos is just perfect. Just the building of it, and then the Trinity test, and my heart was racing like never before. I don't know how. Like we know that
it worked.
Like, we know that it worked.
We know work didn't ignite the atmosphere, but still, like the countdown is going. You're like, oh my god, this is gonna happen. We're like, I think in my head, like I've been hyping up this moment in my head, like how is it gonna look for all this time, and then it happens, and you're like, okay, it actually looks that good, and then the rest of the movie happens, of course, with the legal stuff, and I didn't mind the 3 hours. It didn't feel like 3 hours. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna be watching it again.
Yes. Yeah, it's not that I didn't. So I didn't mind the legal stuff at the end. I will just say that for me, that was to me where I started to feel the length because I mean, I knew that they were going to drop the bomb or rather test the bomb at the 2 hour mark. But I don't know. There was something about it. I'm like, oh, this feels so finite. And then I'm like, oh, there's another hour of legal stuff to go. And like, and I'm like, it's not that it wasn't good, but I'm like, this is where I'm starting to feel the length, and this is where it's starting to set it. But I mean, we know. I mean, Nolan even said it. He's like, yeah, it's like I'm filming an atom bomb dropping. I'm dropping a fucking atom bomb, and my God, he did. And like Luisa, like you were saying, the way that the sound just like ripples, and also like so you know that they did that for real because every single time that you see a bomb or an explosion of any kind of movie, whenever it's CG, you hear the sound like immediately, but the way that like it had the silence first, you know, and you just saw the visuals
Because it's so
erupt.
far away.
Because it's so far away.
I love that they did that, and
Yes.
then all you heard was Murphy.
Then you feel the shockwave, but it's like it feels like yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty one. And I want to say, like, in terms of just Nolan's filmmaking abilities, I knew that every scene had just vital information in it and something that you couldn't miss. I have a small bladder and I had to pee once I got to like the hour and a half mark, but I couldn't leave the theater. I just couldn't do it because I knew, I was like, okay, it's going to probably take me like the bathrooms are on the other side of the theater. It's probably take me like maybe under 10 minutes to do this. I'm going to miss so much vital information in that time. So I had to just sit there with this full bladder because I couldn't leave. I could not leave the theater. It was just like every moment seemed so vital throughout the whole film.
Yeah, see, it's funny because I couldn't leave anywhere within the first hour because that's going to be all the setup. And I knew the second hour was going to be the build up to the bomb dropping. And I'm like, but if there's ever a point to go and use the bathroom, it's going to be right after the bomb drops, right in between like when the bomb drops and when they go to the legal proceedings. And so that's exactly what I timed it precisely.
Oh man. I couldn't do that because I was like, no, but what if they say something really important in that time?
But I was like, nah.
I'm like, it's only legal stuff. Like,
I'm like, nah. It's only gonna be. I'm like, the only thing that's gonna happen here is I'm like, Oppenheimer knows they're gonna use the bomb on Japan, and he's gonna wait for Matt Damon to tell him, but Matt Damon's purposely not gonna tell him until they actually drop the bomb. So that's exactly what happened.
Why would you want to miss that? That's the thing. Like,
that's the thing. See, but that's the thing. I was able to time it where I was able to get out and then come back in like right before. Like I came back in like right before he was here on the radio broadcast. So it was like really quick. And the theater wasn't like a huge theater, so I only had to like run down the stairs, pee, run back up. And I've got long legs, so I was just like, I was booking it. I'm like, I'm not missing a goddamn minute of this. Yeah, it was. Yeah,
I'm 5'1", so it would have taken me a lot longer.
But I mean, you even said it. The bathrooms were like on the opposite end of the theater.
I couldn't. It wasn't worth it. There were a few people that got up at that point as well to go pee because I could just tell they were like, I can't do this anymore, and they just
and I'm like, that's just poor aesthetic choice on the choice of the theater itself. It's like you want to have bathrooms like within like walking distance of all the theaters.
Yeah,
especially since
but again, I went
so
to a movie theater that was renovating.
That's why. That is why.
Yeah. So, hey, I watched, it just added to the anticipation. Watching the second half of Oppenheimer with the full bladder, tell you what.
Oh, man. Definitely adds a whole new level of suspense there that wasn't there to begin with. But, yeah, I mean, oh, man, Luke, I mean, like you said, like coming out of that theater just with the existential dread that came from it. Like, you're right. Like, you come out of that movie feeling a little bit heavier. You're like, I feel like I just gained 10 pounds. Like, what is happening here? Like, this is just so like heartbreaking, but also like exhilarating at the same time. Like, again, I don't think I've ever seen a movie quite like it. Like, because I feel like every biopic you come away like learning something, and I'm like, I definitely learned something, but I don't know if it's necessarily something that makes me feel better, but it is something that I feel like I needed to know. And I feel like that's in the year of 2023, that's especially difficult, is to get people to watch something that they may not necessarily want to watch. I feel like that's even more difficult, especially given the amount of options and the amount of ease of access that there is to watching content now. But Nolan is a guy, again, he's prided himself on analog, he's prided himself on the traditional theatrical experience, and he's also prided himself on being one of the few people that can make movies that are for the traditional theatrical experience. So I think without further ado, I mean, we're at the hour mark right now. So I think this is a perfect place to leave it. This is a 5 out of 5 for me. This is my number one of the year. This is to me, this is to me, again, it's the most enjoyment and the most different kind of exhilaration that I've gotten from a movie experience so far within the year of 2023. Easily. So final star rankings for you two.
Yeah.
You go, Luke.
Okay. It's an easy 5 out of 5. I knew like around when they were in Los Alamos, like, yeah, this is gonna be a 5.
Yeah.
It does pip Spider-Verse for me in my year of rankings. But it's good to have two different films like that at the top of your list.
Yes.
Is Barbie significantly lower? I will say that, but
Yes.
I'm glad that Oppenheimer delivered, and however long that takes, I await Nolan's next film. I mean,
Yes.
by the pattern, it's probably going to be sci-fi. So
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, more than likely. What's it called? Yeah, no, I'm very, very much looking forward. Even if we have to wait until like 2026 or 7 in order to get it, I'll wait. I will wait for Nolan. I wait. Louisa, you're final.
I will wait for Nolan.
I will wait for Nolan.
That's going to be the caption of this entire podcast. I will wait for Nolan.
Yes.
I would also give it a 5. I thought it was very well done. I'm looking forward to seeing it again. It's a very good film.
Yes, absolutely. Could not agree with that more. With that said, people, that is it. The summer movie series is winding down. We officially have 2 more entries, and then if we have a fall release schedule at all, that will be the question. It depends on when or if this strike will resolve anytime soon, if the studios will actually come to the table and negotiate a fair deal with the writers. But with that being said, we're taking next week off. We've got Ninja Turtles the first weekend of August. Then we'll be wrapping up the summer movie season with Blue Beetle in the middle of August. But first off, Louisa, thanks so much for coming on. Hope you had a good time. For sure.
I had so much fun. I love doing this stuff. So thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Hope to have you on for many more. You got any social media outlets that you want to plug for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my main social media is on Instagram. It's just Louisa Tascone, LuisaTascone. You can follow me there, or I have a website, louisatascone.com.
Yes, as it says in the little name icon right below, right below her picture, right there. Luke, as always, where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
You can follow me at Luke Reviews on Instagram and rarely on YouTube. My next endeavor will be Killers of the Flower Moon. Yes. It's a much shorter book. It's only 300 pages. The letters are bigger and there's pictures, so that will be less of an effort. But all right, I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent. Yes. What's it called? We shall see if I am able to get to it before the movie comes out, if the movie even comes out this year. And of course, follow myself with everything going on at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms. Be sure to follow the official Talkin TV podcast across all platforms. This video is available on YouTube and Twitch right now. Subscribe there. Be sure to this episode will be available on Spotify tomorrow morning. And as always, people, 12 seasons in a short film and watch more fucking movies. We'll see you guys next time.